The Cincinnati Reds odds at winning the NL Central are better than you think.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Reds. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all the land. Thank you so much for helping us get there. As always, we are your team each and every day. My name's Stephen Offenbaker. His name is Jeff Carr. We love baseball. We love the Cincinnati Reds. We're lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. We love talking about the Reds so much that we've been doing it in podcast form for a combined 14 seasons. That's a long time. On today's show, Jeff, we're going to get into a couple very interesting topics that are going on in the baseball world today. We're going to start with the Reds' odds for winning in 2026. And a little bit later, we're going to dig into OPS Plus, why we love it so much, and how it gives us a very quick overview of what's going on with a player, what's going on in the league. We'll get into that here in a few minutes. We're also going to take a look at the television uncertainty. There's a lot of gamesmanship going on right now with the TV contracts and the rights deals and the media and everything Major League Baseball is trying to do to, I think, squeeze more money out of the market. We're going to get into all of that coming up in just a few minutes. But again, where we are going to start is with the odds of how the Cincinnati Reds could do in 2026. That's all on today's show, brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game. Check out FanDuel today. All right, Jeff, let's get into this because the odds. Oh boy, what are the odds? The odds came
Never
out.
tell me the odds.
Yeah, don't tell me the odds, because you look at these odds, and I personally think the odds makers have this wrong, because they rank the Cincinnati Reds as third in the division to win the National League Central, where I still think they're fourth. And by the gap between third and fourth was what surprised me the most in the rankings here and the odds, because there's a big gap between where they have the Reds at third and the Pirates at fourth. And that surprised me.
Yeah, I wrote about this over at CincinnatiRedsTalk.com just the other day, and I think it's intriguing. The Reds are at plus 340, so if you put $10 down, you win $34 if they win the division. I'm sure people probably put more than that, but that's all I'm willing to put down on any sort of bet. But plus 340 to win the division, and they're not really that far behind the top two guys, who are the Brewers and the Cubs. Brewers and the Cubs are right next to each other. Brewers at plus 165, Cubs at plus 170. And it's not as if odds makers take into account the moves that teams might make. Odds makers are looking at the roster as it is now. They are not looking and saying, okay, well, if the Reds sign a Eugenio Suarez, they're at plus 340. They're saying, no, now as is, the roster that they have. And I think that would surprise people. And as I wrote in my article, I was just like, I think people in Vegas like the Reds more than people in Cincinnati. And it's amazing to see. But as you mentioned, that gap between them and the Pirates, I think, is what would shock people the most, as there are a lot of fatalist Reds fans around here that would like to say that the Pirates are better than the Reds now. FanDuel disagrees totally.
Yeah, fatalist, I think, is a little bit extreme. I mean, it's not like I said send Matt McLain
pessimistic
or something. Jeez, you have to look at this team, and I don't know, Jeff, if it's just that we're just so in it that we can't see, the forest for the trees, whatever it is. But I still, after I saw those odds yesterday, I kind of tried to take a step back and look at this Cincinnati Reds team and tried to remove my Reds bleeding heart from the equation and really look at this team. And I still arrive at a place where the Brewers and the Cubs are the teams that are going to battle for the division. The Reds didn't do very much at all to be better. Are they better? I tried to ask myself the question, are they better? And the rotation is as good as it was. There were no real upgrades other than you get everybody healthy, maybe.
Arguably deeper, but you're right. It didn't get better at the top.
Right. I look at the bullpen. Did the bullpen get better? I think there's a chance the bullpen is better. It kind of depends where it lands, but so I'll give that. I'll hash I'll give that a hash mark tick. Okay, the bullpen is better. Is the lineup better? Is this team better offensively right now than it was yet last year? I think this team right now is a little bit worse than where it was in 2025. Austin Hayes is gone. Miguel Andujar is gone. This lineup is not as good. So I don't know how in the world people think there's this much gap between the Reds and the Pittsburgh Pirates, who did go out and upgrade. The Pittsburgh Pirates are a better team right now than the team that ended the 2025 season. And I just, we go through this every year with, the projections and the odds makers, and they tick me off every year. And this is where I'm in. So if the Reds don't make another move, I think the battle for third and fourth place is going to be much closer than what these odds indicate. And I don't think either of the third or fourth place teams will be as close to the first and second place teams as these odds make it look.
Which I forgot to mention that the odds for the Pirates are plus 950. So literally almost 10-1 for the Pirates to win the division, as opposed to the Reds at plus 340. This is all according to our friends over at FanDuel. And I've also seen, and it's funny because you say, oh, we're always mad at the odds maker. Well, usually we're mad at them because we think that they're underselling us. And now I think you're mad because you think they're overselling us. And I'll add to that because I saw that another sports book, not to be named on this podcast, does have win totals out for Major League Baseball teams. They have the Reds over under at 83.5.
Oh, I would take the that's a hard one, buddy. I'm like, I'll take the under. I'm like, wait, let me think about that for a second. What would you do with that, Jeff Carr? Because for me, that's like almost spot on. I think this is an 82 win team.
If I had to take it, yeah. Because I would stay away. Like if you were to ask me right now what I would do with it, I would stay away from it because I don't bet the under on the Reds win total because I don't want to root for them to not win all the games. But at the same time, like I have a hard time saying that where they are right now equates to more wins than what they had last year, because I get it. You can say, okay, well, Matt McLain is probably more healthy and he's going to bounce back. And Elly De La Cruz is probably more healthy now that he has two legs. And, Sal Stewart, we're going to get more time from him. And we got better defense all year at third base in Ke'Bryan Hayes rather than just 2 months of it. And this, that, and the other. There's different things that you can point to, but as we go back to, that's that word that we all know the Reds love, and we wish they would supplement: hope. It's all hope. That we hope that those things happen. And in fact, I saw that C. Trent had a nice article over on The Athletic talking about, are the Reds actually better? And he was kind of laying out a bunch of different things. And he's like, honestly, until they add a middle of the order bat, it's hard for me to say that they are better, because right now we're going into the season thinking that either Tyler Stevenson, maybe they give it to Sal Stewart, although I have a hard time feeling Terry Francona is going to make him the opening day cleanup hitter, but I don't know. Maybe they give it to Noelvi Marte. Like, as the roster is currently constructed, I don't know who you put behind Elly De La Cruz in the lineup. You could just literally throw a dart against the wall and put that guy's name in the fourth spot in the lineup, because I don't feel like they have a clear-cut answer. Yeah,
first of all, it's nice of C. Trent to write down what we've been saying all offseason. Really appreciate that from C. Trent. You got to go get that hitter. And you're right. Looking at what do you do at the 4 spot if this is the team, if they don't sign somebody else, it's a big gamble, because consistency wise, there's really nobody that you can say, we're going to put that guy as number 4. He's going to be the dude. Noelvi probably has the most potential to be a number 4 guy, but he hasn't realized that potential yet. He hasn't hit that mark. Could it be this year? Yeah, sure. But you're rolling the dice there. So I don't think there's anybody that's guaranteed protection for Elly De La Cruz on this team right now, which is the unfortunate thing, because it's really what Elly needs. He needs somebody hitting behind him that forces pitchers to give him something to hit. And there's all these things go into this picture of the odds. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get what the odds makers looked at, because, the odds makers, listen, the odds makers are very, very good at their job, because their whole thing is to structure these odds and structure the thing so that the house wins. That's the idea. And they don't get that wrong, or they don't have a job. It's not like, coaching for the Bengals or being an owner of the Cincinnati Reds. Mediocrity doesn't keep you your job. You get fired. So these guys are very good at this. Yeah. They're very good at this. So, it gives me pause, and I keep looking. I'm looking at Baseball Reference right now. I'm like, what am I not seeing that the odds makers are seeing? I'm looking at the Pittsburgh Pirates over here. What are the odds makers seeing over there that I'm not seeing? So I don't know what metrics they're using, but I would like to get my hands on it, because if they end up being right about this, I'm going to just be like, I need to know what tools we're using here, folks.
Well, and to add to your consternation, I can guarantee you this: if the Reds go get a Eugenio Suarez, and if the Brewers do what everybody thinks they're going to do and trade Freddie Peralta, and if the Cubs continue to act like they are smarter than everybody in the room and just don't do anything this year, there's a really good chance that the Reds odds might be like indistinguishable from the Brewers and the Cubs, maybe even better than the Brewers if they trade away Freddie Peralta. But that's going to be a lot of fun if that ends up happening. We'll have a lot of fun talking about that here on Locked On Reds. But I know this, Steve, there's another development that's really taken place over the last week that could affect the rest of this offseason for the Reds, could affect this year for the Reds. But if you are thinking that, man, this looks like a mess, to quote the Joker, it's all part of the plan.
Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions that you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all of your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in. The personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. The automatic transaction categorization is a game changer. I can finally see exactly where my money is going each month. You can set budgets and goals, get personalized insights, and receive real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. It even consolidates your checking, savings, loans, and investments into a single dashboard so you can get a clear view of your entire financial picture. To get started, just visit Rocket Money right now and let them help you get to reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on to get started today.
Thank you for making Locked On Reds your first listen today and every day, and thank you for making us part of your day all the time. You already live your team every single day. Now, take it up a notch and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club over at lockedonreds.supercast.com, and you'll get an ad-free feed of the episode. You'll also get the exclusive Discord for all of Locked On. You get to talk with other Locked On fans and hosts and all this other stuff and so much more. Again, that's lockedonreds.supercast.com to learn more about the Everydayer Club today. All right, Steve, I'm sure you saw this, and I'm sure most of the folks have seen this by now, but the parent company that runs FanDuel Sports Network, who actually is the same as the one that went crazy a couple of years ago, which was Diamond Sports Group. Now it's Main Street Sports Group. It's pretty much the same company, just different name. You know, they tried to put a new coat of paint on it. They missed their payment to the St. Louis Cardinals, and there are lots of talk that they will miss their payment to the rest of the teams that they represent, which include our Cincinnati Reds. Also includes like the Atlanta Braves and a bunch of other teams. So this isn't like a Reds only thing. This is a big problem for a bunch of teams in the league. There are already 7 teams that are being broadcast by Major League Baseball, not by any sort of channel or anything like that. There's another 9, including the Reds, that could be added to that group if Main Street Sports just dissolves within the next couple of weeks. And so that's going to create a revenue problem for the Reds this year. But to be honest with you, Steve, if you look at the bigger picture of all of this, this is posturing for the CBA war to come next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that what's happening right now is baseball's trying to maximize revenue. They've been putting the squeeze on these regional sports networks where, by the way, a lot of the teams have ownership stakes in the regional sports networks. So,
right.
You know, it's all about accounting and taxes. And there's lots of things that play here.
Lots of non-baseball things. Yes.
Non-baseball things that don't involve broadcasting the game. Here's what I know. You look at this and the fans' reaction is, oh my God, Am I going to be able to watch the Reds this year? How am I watching the Reds? You're going to watch the Reds the same way you have always watched the Reds. We saw what happens, what Major League Baseball will do if that tomorrow, the channels go under. Major League Baseball will say, well, the Cincinnati Reds channel launches in 2 days. It'll be on your cable. That's what they did with the Padres.
Restrictions
That's what
on
they've
the
done.
app, all that stuff.
That's exactly the model that they have implemented. Now, look, this is not exclusive to Major League Baseball. They're not the only ones dealing with this. The regional sports networks broadcast NBA and NHL, right? We already see the NBA developing their contingency plan. They've been talking about it. They have a plan in place. And you know what their plan is? It's the same plan that Major League Baseball did with the Padres. They're going to put out their own regional channels. You're going to get to watch the games. What this impacts, I think, is what the teams are doing from a spending standpoint, because this is part of their budget. Now, fortunately for small market teams like the Reds, they've kind of already set their budget. Things are already in motion. This is not going to be that impactful this season. I think next season it's not going to matter because there's going to be a lockout. And then we get into the new CBA the following year with the new ESPN streaming deal in place. The new ESPN's taking over Major League Baseball TV. If you missed that, that doesn't mean MLB TV is going away, but ESPN's going to be the distributor for that. They're going to be the streamer. So there's all these interwoven pieces and parts. And I know it gives you a headache when you look at it, but it boils down to the fact that you're still going to be able to watch the Reds in 2026, whatever little banner it is that they put on the thing. Right now up in our corner of the screen, look, it says Locked On Reds. It says Locked On Network, your team every day. That's our brand. That's our network. Whatever brand it is that Major League Baseball goes with in 2026, the content remains the same. You're going to get to watch the Reds.
Right. And I think that the two main things to take away from that is that, as well as if there is any sort of budget talk, it is just simply to posture. This is all part of the plan. I'm going to make a TV network disappear. But that's exactly what they're looking for, because if you're going to create a salary cap and a salary floor, you need revenue sharing. How do you share revenue? The league controls the revenue, because that's what the NFL does. The NFL controls their league revenue that is sent to all of the teams. That's exactly how you have to do it for Major League Baseball. The biggest problem will be you have the Dodgers, you have the Yankees, you have the Cubs that own their own networks and make buku bucks, and those networks are stronger than ever. They are not in the same position as Main Street and Root Sports that broadcasted Mariners games and things like that have all either dissolved or threatening to dissolve because of how much money they lost, because the reports were, and this is all, I'm getting this all from an article from The Athletic that was Evan Drellich and Katie Wu who wrote the article, and they said that Main Street Sports, the parent company of FanDuel Sports Network, lost over $200 million last year. And so, yeah, they're probably not going to be all right. That's a lot of money to be losing. But with all of that being said, all of the finer details that, quite frankly, all of us are like, honestly, tell me more about analytics, because I'd rather hear more about that than this. It just means that broadcasting is all going under the same umbrella that Major League Baseball has designed. And that is where they will go at the salary cap idea for the CBA. So don't be surprised by this. Don't be worried about this as a fan, because we as fans, this doesn't affect us at all. In fact, you could argue it makes our experience a little bit better, because it's going to lift black.
If it ends the blackouts, oh my God. If it could end the,
that's what we wanted.
You have no idea how frustrating it is when the Reds are on a West Coast trip, because it doesn't matter if they're anywhere between Seattle and San Diego. If they're anywhere in between those places, I cannot watch them in Hawaii in the middle of the ocean, because they're blacked out. Every single West Coast team is blacked out. I can't wait for blackouts to go away. But you hit the nail on the head. And as to why there's going to be a prolonged lockout next year when they're doing the CBA, and you nailed it. It's because there's a handful of teams, 4 or 5 teams, that are not the same as the rest. And the reason that this lockout is going to be so prolonged is because not only are the players and the owners not going to agree with each other, the owners are not going to agree with each other. So they're going to have to work through that before they can work things out with the players. That is why it's doom and gloom for me heading into this next CBA. These kind of things, these things where you've got the Dodgers and the Yankees and the big spenders and the big money guys and the New York Mets and all of these teams that are the haves and the rest of the league that feels like a have-nots. And we're talking about guys that are multimillionaires. So I don't lean into that have-nots thing very much, but they feel like have-nots. They feel like they're missing out. And all of those owners that feel like, hey, I want to be like that. All of those guys are going to get together, and it's going to be a logjam. It's going to take a long time for somebody to move and for that to break. And this is one of the bigger pieces of that, because you're absolutely right. The Dodgers have their own network. They're going to have to give that up. The Yankees have their own network. They're going to have to give that up. And that is going to require a fight, and it's going to take some time.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, and it will. We will cover it as it gets closer. I'm going to try not to talk about it a ton throughout the year.
God help us if that's that's what we're talking about. All we're not doing
it. We could. Unfortunately, I'm not excited about that fact, but that is the overarching. That's the looming cloud over everything that happens this year, and so we're going to focus on baseball.
Here's my commitment to the everydayers. The second that Jeff Carr tries to bring an economist in here to talk to us, I'm shutting it down. Don't you worry, guys.
Economist. That starts with an E, right?
All right. That's enough of all this. Let's get out of this segment. Coming up, OPS Plus. We love it. We love to talk about it. We love to use it. And we're going to tell you why coming up next.
EC. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting on them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to bets that you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. With all the different games that are going on, so many close games, and of course, then you look at the Rams and the Panthers. Right now, Panthers are 10.5-point dogs at home. I feel like the home dogs howl even in the playoffs, but man, the Rams look good. You got to look at all of that over on FanDuel, and you can make your picks. Then apply your profit boost to go even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day.
If you can't watch us here on YouTube, you can listen to us on your favorite podcasting app. We're on every single one of them. If you find one that we're not on that you need us to be on, just let us know. Jeff can probably make that happen for you. Also, by the way, buddy, your background when we're full screen, your all-terrain transport scout guy back there is on point. Your Star Wars. I know that was a gift to you, and I know you have it strategically located. It looked good in the shot. I will give you that. I know that makes you happy.
Yeah.
Let's dive into OPS Plus, because OPS Plus makes me happy. I love it when there are modern statistics. And when I say that, I'm talking about statistics that if you listen to a replay of a 1970s, 1980s baseball game, you're not going to hear anybody talk about it. These are the modern statistics that I'm talking about. I love OPS Plus as a modern statistic because it lets you just look at a player, look at them compared to the rest of the league, and get a very quick idea of how it is they're performing. And a lot of times we look at this number, Jeff, and it paints a picture of a player that we might have been down on, that we might not think is having per se a good season, but you look at them compared to the rest of the league and you think, well, they're actually performing okay. There's not a lot of guys better that we could replace them with right now. They shouldn't feel like they're worried about losing their spot. And I like OPS Plus for that. And I like how then you can also look at it over eras and see how, Hank Aaron's OPS Plus was in, 1972 or whatnot. You can compare it that way. And I feel like it's a great statistic as a starting point to figure out what a player is really doing.
Yeah. And for anybody that doesn't know or isn't aware of, we love to use this stat. The way that OPS Plus works is that it compares a player's performance to league average. League average is 100. So that's why we always say, boy, we really want a guy that's over 100. And if he's over 110, he's really good. If he's over 120, he's all-star level. And if he's over 130, 140, we're talking about like, we're starting to talk about MVP conversations. And so things like that are what we want to look for. And there were a lot of Reds that were under 100 last year, but there were 4 regular players that were over 100. And I think that would surprise people to know that there were that many people over 100. The reason being, league average last year was kind of rough, because if I told you, Steve, in the history of baseball, the context of baseball, and knowing what these stats mean, this player hit 245 batting average, got on base 315, and had a slugging of 404. You're like, well, the slugging is it's okay. The on base is not really that good, and the average, well, 245 batting average in 1980 ain't gonna get you paid. So knowing all of that stuff, you're like, boy, that's not a very good player. That was the league average slash line last year. So when you see guys that hit 250 and hit 260, know that they were above league average when it comes to batting average last season. If they had a on base percentage of 320 or above, they were above league average. And if they slugged 405 or better, they were above league average. And so that's why you get things like TJ Friedl, who hit 261 and slugged in the 390s, but he had a 102 OPS plus because he had such a high on base percentage. And that's why you look at that in terms of this year. But like you said, there's also a historical context to it, because it takes into account league average for the given season and then assigns a player a value for that, accordingly, so that you can compare. And like I told you in prep, you could compare the rookie performance of Pete Rose and his Rookie of the Year award to what TJ Friedl did last year. And TJ Friedl actually had a better OPS plus than Pete Rose had in his rookie season. And I know everybody just got mad.
Yeah, I'm chuckling because when you threw this number out during prep, I was like, really? Pete Rose at a 101, if I remember correctly, yes, what you said for his rookie season, 101. 1% better than league average, won you Rookie of the Year. The other thing I like about this stat, Jeff, is I think what it helps us do is it helps us take the nostalgia for back in my day out of our evaluation of players, because it's hard, right? If you ask somebody that's in their 60s right now, to evaluate TJ Friedl, who is a great example. If you ask them to evaluate TJ Friedl, you're like, he's not even going to be a bench player on my team. A guy from 1960s is going to say, but in this era of baseball, with pitching being what pitching is, TJ Friedl is better than league average. And that's a guy that should be playing in Major League Baseball right now. And I think this statistic helps us get past our bias for the good old days. And I think that's why I like using it so much, because I can just, bam, I know what that guy's doing. And it helps us kind of explain why a guy's playing or why a guy's in there when, a lot of fans may not necessarily understand why a guy's in there. I really like this tool for that.
And that's why it catches hate from a lot of folks. That's why people are like, I don't like that stat, because that stat literally just said that Pete Rose's Rookie of the Year campaign really wasn't all that impressive. He hit 275, but he slugged 371. And the slugging percentage really brought that down, because slugging percentage back then was pretty good. And so that's why his OPS plus wasn't that great. But that's why it's important to evaluate. The statistic itself is an important thing to evaluate players, because it helps us better understand things. It's not the end all be all, but it is a very, very good starting point to understand where guys are. Of course, other things come into play, like what the luck factor is. Is BABIP going crazy because OPS plus doesn't mess with BABIP? That doesn't affect it at all. So if they have a higher than average BABIP, like we like to talk about batting average on balls in play, if a guy has a lucky BABIP, that will help his OPS plus. But as it stands, this is a very, very good starting point. And one of the reasons that most people, whether it's OPS plus or WRC plus, which is what Fangraphs uses, that's basically the same thing, just a little bit different maths. That it's insignificant for our understanding, but for folks that really get into the mathematics of it, it is a little bit different. But they're essentially the same stat trying to prove the same point.
And for the everydayers, I know you're like, well, we've heard you say these things before, guys, but what we're trying to do is, we get new people in the channel, in the feeds all the time. And what we want to do is to make sure that everybody kind of understands what we're talking about when we get in season. So we did this a little bit last year. We're going to do this a little bit again this year in the off season. Just from time to time here at the end of a show, we're going to drop in some of the stats we like to use, talk about why we like them, what they mean, and how we'll use them in 2026 to evaluate what the Reds are doing. So that when we're telling you, no, TJ Friedl should be in there. When we're telling you that Matt McLain's having a much better season than last season, and here's why, you're going to understand what it is we're looking at and what we're talking about so that everybody's on the same page and we can just root for this team.
Exactly. And that is where we'll end today's podcast. Thank you so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast. Make sure that you are subscribed here on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app, because we're going to be with you all throughout the off season. I know that tomorrow is the deadline for exchanging figures and all this other stuff before players have to go to arbitration, and the Reds like to do the whole file and trial thing. So there should be some news as to people agreeing to contracts or whether they'll go to arbitration or not. We'll have that covered. We'll have you covered with any more rumors that come about and anything that the Reds might do this off season as we start to ramp up for spring training here and we get ready for Reds Fest coming up next week as well. But thank you so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast. And make sure you go check out Locked On MLB on your audio feeds, or if you're on the video feed, just hang on. We got the first ever 24/7 streaming channel for Locked On coming at you right after this. And thank you so much for making us part of your day, because you know that Steve and myself, and sometimes Ten Daniel too, will be Locked On Reds every single day. The Dark Knight is 17 years old. No, almost 18 years old. And I still think about that on a daily basis.
Oh, boy. Why so serious?